Bacteriophage protocol. Picture a laboratory in the early 20th century. Glass flasks, cloudy cultures, and something invisible doing the impossible. In the 1920s and 1930s, scientists discovered viruses that hunt bacteria. Not humans, bacteria. They were called bacteriophages. Natural predators, evolved over billions of years. At a research institute in Tbilisi, Georgia, these microscopic hunters were turned into medicine. Infections that once meant certain death began to vanish. Success rates climbed past 90% for diseases doctors could barely treat. The method was elegant, almost too elegant. First, identify the exact bacteria causing the illness. Then, introduce the virus designed to destroy only that bacteria. Inside the body, the phage would multiply. The bacteria would burst from within. And when the target was gone, the virus simply disappeared. No toxic side effects. No damage to healthy cells. No lingering drug in the body. Across the world, outbreaks collapsed. Plague, cholera, dysentery. Medical journals filled with case after case of patients walking away from infections that should have killed them. During World War II, this approach quietly saved limbs and lives. Soldiers with infected wounds that demanded amputation elsewhere were treated and returned to duty. The records showed it worked. Western medicine took notice. For a brief moment, major pharmaceutical companies even produced phage treatments. Shelves carried them. Doctors prescribed them. Then something simpler arrived. A single drug. Mass-produced. Easy to store. Easy to prescribe. One pill for many infections. Antibiotics changed everything. They could be patented, standardized, sold at scale. Phages could not. Each case required precision, skilled microbiologists, fresh preparations, careful storage, short shelf life. Nature didn't allow ownership. By mid-century, funding evaporated. Medical schools stopped teaching it. Regulatory barriers rose higher and higher. Approvals demanded trials no company would pay for. The therapy didn't fail. It was quietly pushed aside. Behind closed borders, the research continued. Thousands of patients treated every year. High success rates. But the work was dismissed, ignored, or labeled unreliable. Then the cracks appeared. By the 1970s, bacteria were fighting back. Antibiotic resistance spread. Stronger drugs led to stronger superbugs. Infections returned that medicine could no longer control. Decades later, researchers looked back and confirmed the truth. The old data held up. Phages worked, especially against resistant bacteria. Trials in Europe and the United States echoed the past. Same results, same success, but the system hadn't changed. Approval frameworks built for chemical drugs couldn't handle living, evolving viruses. Costs soared into the hundreds of millions. No patent, no profit, no progress. Today, as resistance threatens to drag medicine backward, this century-old solution remains locked behind regulations, used only as a last resort when nothing else remains. A cure abandoned not because it failed, but because it worked too well. And that raises a chilling question. How many other breakthroughs met the same fate? Agrofiber composite. Picture a factory floor in the early 1940s. Steel presses, assembly lines, and a car body that shouldn't exist. Instead of metal, the panels are made from plants. This experimental material was created by compressing hemp fibers with other plant matter, locked together in a natural resin. Light in the hand, tough under pressure, and grown, not mined. During a public demonstration, a sledgehammer was swung at the rear panel. The impact echoed through the room. The hammer rebounded. The panel didn't even dent. Film cameras captured the moment. Lab tests told the same story. This plant-based composite absorbed impacts better than steel. It didn't rust. It didn't corrode. It weighed far less, improving fuel efficiency. And when its job was done, it could return to the soil. Unlike petroleum plastics or metal, its life cycle was clean from start to finish. Hemp grew fast. No pesticides. Healthier soil. Processing the fibers required a fraction of the energy needed to melt and shape steel. The vision went further than cars. Fields replacing oil wells. Farmers growing the raw materials for fuel, plastics, and parts. Manufacturing powered by harvests, not drilling rigs. Land was acquired. Plans were drafted. Other manufacturers quietly watched. Then the supply vanished. A sweeping law made no distinction between industrial hemp and drug cannabis. Cultivation became legally impossible. Taxes, permits, and regulations crushed the crop overnight. Without domestic hemp, production collapsed. Importing it cost too much. The entire program shut down. War soon consumed the industry. Steel was redirected to tanks and aircraft. Civilian innovation froze. And when peace returned, a different material took over. Petroleum plastics. They were cheap, patentable, controlled by oil companies. A perfect system: oil to chemicals, chemicals to plastic, plastic to manufacturers. One pipeline, one profit chain. Hemp-based materials threatened all of it. Farmers controlling raw supply. Plastics that biodegrade instead of piling up. Products that lasted exactly as long as they were needed and no longer. That kind of efficiency didn't fit an economy built on waste and replacement. Decades later, the material resurfaced. Modern tests confirmed what the old engineers already knew. Stronger, lighter, cleaner. But without scale, and with restrictions still lingering, it remains expensive, marginal, contained. The plant-based car proved something radical. That petroleum was never the only option. And that success may have been the very reason it disappeared. So what happens when the next experiment threatens an entire industry again? Verdant catalyst. Imagine a landscape where hunger has always been part of daily life. Dry soil, limited crops, children growing weaker with each passing season. Then a tree enters the picture. In the 1970s and 1980s, researchers searching for answers to chronic malnutrition focused on a fast-growing plant thriving in tropical heat. It needed little water, minimal care, and its leaves were unlike anything they had measured before. Nutrient analysis was staggering. 7 times more vitamin C than oranges, multiple times the calcium of milk, more vitamin A than carrots, more potassium than bananas, protein, iron, essential micronutrients, all packed into soft green leaves. Small daily servings were enough to meet basic nutritional needs. Field trials followed. In regions where severe malnutrition was common, powdered leaves were added to children's diets. Within weeks, weight returned. Energy improved. Health markers rebounded faster than with standard supplementation programs. But the tree held more surprises. Crushed seeds dropped into dirty water caused impurities to bind together and sink. Clean drinking water emerged. No chemicals, no filters. Villages using this method saw waterborne disease rates fall sharply. Animals fed the leaves grew healthier. Milk production increased. The wood could be harvested for fuel without killing the tree. Oil pressed from the seeds had industrial uses. Every part served a purpose. The growth rate was astonishing. A single planting produced usable harvests within months. Communities began planting them widely. Seeds were shared. Knowledge spread. In village after village, something rare happened. Nutritional independence. Child mortality dropped. Health improved. Aid dependence faded. Then attention shifted. Large agricultural firms and supplement manufacturers saw opportunity. The leaves could be dried, branded, and sold as premium superfood powders in wealthy markets. Processing techniques were patented. Extraction methods locked behind legal frameworks. But there was a problem. The solution worked best when grown locally, for free. Communities that planted their own trees no longer needed fortified foods, vitamin packets, or long-term aid programs. Entire supply chains became unnecessary. Funding began to thin. Promotion programs quietly lost support. Research grants dried up. Institutional enthusiasm cooled, despite clear evidence of success. New obstacles appeared. Import restrictions. Cultivation limits. Expensive certifications that small producers couldn't afford, justified by concerns that made little sense for a tree cultivated for centuries. The tree never disappeared. It still grows across the tropics. Families still use it. Villages still rely on it. But the large-scale push to end malnutrition with a simple, local solution was quietly abandoned. Today, The same leaves are sold at high prices in health stores thousands of miles away, while hunger persists where the tree could grow in every yard. A solution that made people self-sufficient at almost no cost. And that may have been its greatest flaw. So if a single tree could threaten an entire system, what happens when the next discovery does the same? Autogenic matrix. Picture a slab of concrete left to the mercy of time. Hairline cracks form. Water seeps in. Decay begins. That's how infrastructure has always failed. Until something inside the concrete woke up. In the mid-2000s, a new kind of building material emerged. One that didn't just resist damage, but responded to it. This concrete was alive, in a sense. Embedded within it were dormant bacteria, sealed in microscopic capsules, waiting. The organisms were chosen for one reason: endurance. They could survive for decades inside hardened concrete without food, air, or light. When a crack formed and moisture entered, the capsules dissolved. The bacteria activated. They consumed a stored nutrient and produced limestone, the same material concrete is made from. The crack didn't spread. It closed. In laboratory tests, samples were deliberately fractured and then exposed to water. Within weeks, the gaps vanished, filled with newly formed stone. Strength tests showed something unexpected. The healed sections were just as strong as the original material, sometimes even stronger. The repair wasn't a patch. It was regeneration. Real-world trials followed. Sections of actual structures were built using this self-healing mix. Years passed. Conventional concrete aged the way it always does, cracking, weakening, demanding repair. The bio-enhanced sections stayed intact. And when cracks appeared, they sealed themselves. The implications were staggering. Bridges that don't crumble. Buildings that don't slowly decay. Infrastructure with a lifespan measured in centuries instead of decades. Maintenance costs could collapse. Inspection schedules could shrink. Entire cities could be built once and last. The environmental impact was just as dramatic. Cement production is one of the world's largest sources of carbon emissions. If structures lasted 10 times longer, emissions from construction would drop just as sharply. The technology worked. Papers confirmed it. Awards followed. Commercial rollout seemed inevitable. Then reality set in. The material cost more upfront. Not much more, but enough. Construction contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, not the longest-lasting solution. Lifetime savings didn't matter when initial price decided everything. And there was a deeper problem. An entire industry depends on concrete failing. Inspection firms, repair contractors, material suppliers, maintenance budgets, all built around predictable decay. If concrete stopped breaking, those revenue streams disappeared. Even regulations weren't ready. Building codes had no category for materials that repair themselves. Approval processes dragged on. Insurance questions surfaced. Who is responsible for a building expected to stand for 2 centuries? So adoption slowed. The material exists. It's produced. It's used sparingly. Meanwhile, cities continue pouring concrete designed to crack, crumble, and be replaced. The experiment proved something extraordinary. Infrastructure that heals itself is possible. And that may be exactly why it hasn't reshaped the world yet. So if even stone that repairs itself is considered too disruptive, what chance does the next breakthrough have? Lithic rebalance. Imagine farmland that has been pushed to its limit. Season after season of harvest. The soil thinner. The crops weaker. More fertilizer required just to stand still. Then someone looked at the ground and asked what was missing. In the early 20th century, a radical idea surfaced. Depleted soil wasn't lacking chemicals. It was lacking minerals. Experiments showed that adding finely ground rock, basalt, granite, volcanic stone, to exhausted fields brought them back to life. Not temporarily. Fundamentally, crops responded immediately. Yields jumped. In some cases, they doubled or even tripled. Plants grew stronger, not just bigger. Pests became less of a problem. Diseases spread more slowly. Frost and drought damage declined. The harvest looked different too. Nutritional analysis revealed produce richer in minerals and vitamins. Denser food. Healthier food. The reasoning was simple. Modern farming strips soil faster than nature can restore it. Chemical fertilizers replace only three nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, while plants require dozens of trace minerals to function properly. Rock dust delivered the full spectrum. The same minerals released naturally by erosion over centuries now returned in one application. The data was thorough. Field comparisons, soil analysis, long-term results. Agricultural institutes across Europe confirmed it. Farmers didn't just see higher yields, they saw healthier ecosystems in their fields. And the cost? Almost nothing. Rock dust was a waste product. Crushed stone discarded by quarries. Spread across fields like any soil amendment, its benefits lasted for years because minerals don't wash away. That was the problem. If fertility could be restored with waste rock, the market for synthetic fertilizers collapsed. A rapidly growing industry based on repeat purchases suddenly faced an alternative that didn't need to be reapplied every season. Pushback followed. Papers appeared questioning whether minerals locked in rock could even be absorbed by plants. Successes were dismissed as coincidence. The idea was labeled unscientific. Yet farmers kept seeing the same results. Soil tests showed mineral levels rising over time as microbes and weather slowly broke down the particles. Crops continued to thrive. As chemical agriculture expanded, the simpler solution faded from view. Marketing budgets grew. Industrial fertilizers became standard. Soil depletion was reframed as normal, something to be managed, not fixed. By mid-century, the method was largely forgotten. Decades later, the pattern repeated. Independent trials around the world quietly confirmed the old results. Better yields, healthier soil, more nutritious food. But mainstream agriculture didn't shift. An approach that restored fertility cheaply, sustainably, and for the long term didn't fit a system built on selling inputs year after year. The soil had a solution. It just wasn't profitable enough to remember. So if feeding the land itself was too disruptive, what does that say about the future of farming? Thermal gradient engine. Picture the open ocean at dawn. Warm water shimmering at the surface. Cold, dark water moving silently thousands of meters below. Between them, an invisible energy gap. In the late 1970s, engineers learned how to tap it. The principle was almost embarrassingly simple. Tropical oceans maintain a steady temperature difference of about 20 degrees Celsius between surface and depth. That difference is enough to run a heat engine. Warm seawater vaporizes a low-boiling fluid. The vapor spins a turbine. Cold water from the deep ocean condenses it back into liquid. The cycle repeats endlessly. No fuel, no smoke, no interruption. A small experimental plant proved it at sea. Net electricity flowed to the grid. Not just briefly, but continuously. Day and night. Calm or storm. Weather didn't matter. A larger system followed. Higher output. Stable operation. Engineers documented something rare in renewable energy. True baseload power. Studies showed that scaled-up versions could rival fossil fuels on cost. A single large installation could generate hundreds of megawatts around the clock. Floating platforms could be deployed across tropical oceans. Power could be sent ashore, used to desalinate water, or converted into hydrogen fuel. The side effects were positive. Cold water drawn from depth carried nutrients. Marine life increased. No emissions, no waste, just motion and heat. For several years, government research programs pushed forward. Designs were refined. Technical hurdles were solved. By the early 1980s, the technology was no longer theoretical. It was ready. Energy companies expressed interest. Commercial projects were being planned. Then the funding collapsed. Budgets were slashed almost overnight. Research teams were disbanded. Pilot plants shut down. The explanation was simple: cost-cutting. But the timing was telling. Support vanished precisely when the system proved it could compete. An energy source that ran continuously threatened fossil fuels. A system that could be deployed offshore threatened centralized utilities. Power without scarcity disrupted everything. A few countries kept the idea alive on paper. Small experiments continued, but no large-scale deployment followed. By the turn of the century, the concept had faded from public conversation. Meanwhile, Billions flowed into intermittent energy sources, systems that required storage, backups, and complex infrastructure. Out in the ocean, the temperature difference never went away. The experiment had worked. Clean, constant power was possible. And that success may have been the reason it was never allowed to surface. So if unlimited energy from the sea could be silenced, what other solutions are still submerged? Pyrogenic immune trigger. Imagine a hospital room from another era. No machines humming, no radiation beams, just a patient, burning with fever, and a tumor beginning to shrink. Decades before modern oncology took shape, a radical idea surfaced. Cancer might not need to be attacked directly. It could be hunted by the body itself. This approach relied on a controlled provocation. Heat-killed bacteria were injected directly into tumors. The body reacted violently. High fevers, intense immune activation. What looked like infection triggered something far more powerful. The immune system woke up. As it fought the perceived threat, it turned its full force on nearby cancer cells. Tumors softened, then shrank. In some cases, they vanished entirely. When case records were later compiled and analyzed, the numbers were impossible to ignore. Hundreds of complete remissions. Patients labeled terminal who went on to live cancer-free for decades. Certain cancers responded especially well. Soft tissue tumors showed survival rates far beyond anything surgery or radiation could offer at the time. Doctors watched tumors regress in real time. The results were documented, repeated, published. This wasn't fringe medicine. It was used for decades in major hospitals. Then cancer treatment changed direction. New technologies arrived, radiation first, then chemotherapy. These approaches fit the emerging medical system perfectly. They could be standardized, scheduled, taught uniformly. Most importantly, they could be patented. The immune trigger approach could not. Every patient reacted differently. Fevers had to be carefully managed. Doses adjusted in real time. Treatment continued until the tumor responded. It demanded clinical judgment, experience, and constant attention. That kind of medicine didn't scale. Medical institutions shifted toward treatments that could be calculated, packaged, and repeated. Oncology became procedural, protocol-driven, assembly line. By mid-century, immune-based bacterial therapy quietly disappeared. Medical schools stopped teaching it. New generations of doctors never heard of it. Pharmaceutical companies had no incentive to revive it. Hospitals preferred treatments that were easier to administer and far more profitable. Decades later, the wheel turned again. Researchers discovered that activating the immune system could indeed cure cancer. Checkpoint inhibitors, engineered immune cells, entire fields built on the same core principle. This time, the treatments were patentable. Today, immunotherapy is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But the original approach, the one that proved the concept generations earlier, remains largely unavailable. Not approved, not funded, not pursued, not because it failed, but because it worked before the system was ready to profit from it. So if curing cancer depended on awakening the body rather than selling a drug, would that approach ever be allowed to return? Atom-scale purifier. Imagine turning seawater, polluted rivers, or even industrial runoff into drinking water almost instantly. No chemicals, no massive pumps, no waiting, just pure water flowing through a filter thinner than a single atom. In 2012, researchers at MIT made that vision real. They created graphene oxide membranes, sheets of carbon arranged in a perfect hexagonal lattice. Water molecules passed through effortlessly, while viruses, bacteria, heavy metals, salts, and chemicals were blocked completely. The results were astonishing. Seawater desalinated in one pass, producing near-perfect water quality. And the energy required? A tiny fraction of conventional reverse osmosis systems. What used to need massive high-pressure pumps could now be done with minimal pressure, or even a hand pump. Cost analysis was equally shocking. Clean water for pennies per 1,000 gallons. Agriculture, drinking water, industry, everything suddenly became feasible, even in regions plagued by water scarcity. Deserts could bloom. Polluted rivers could feed communities. Waterborne diseases could be nearly eliminated. Initial excitement was enormous. Pilot projects began. Major foundations and companies funded development. Graphene filtration seemed poised to revolutionize the global water supply. Then progress stalled. The membranes worked perfectly in the lab, but scaling production of defect-free graphene proved challenging. Some membranes degraded faster than expected under continuous use. Yet these were engineering problems, solvable with investment and focus. Instead, funding dwindled. Projects were delayed indefinitely. Companies shifted focus to other graphene applications. The underlying reason becomes clearer when you look at the system graphene threatened. Trillions of dollars are tied up in centralized water infrastructure. Utilities profit from scarcity. Conventional desalination requires expensive plants and energy-intensive operations, creating long-term revenue streams. A filter that works too well, cheap, portable, scalable, would disrupt all of that. Communities could become water independent. The scarcity model, which makes water a controlled commodity, would collapse. Even industries that profit indirectly from pollution have an incentive to slow down purification technology. Today, research continues in laboratories, but commercial deployment remains minimal. The experiment succeeded perfectly. Graphene can provide nearly limitless clean water at a fraction of current costs. And that success is exactly why it hasn't been allowed to reach the world. Molten salt guardian. Picture a reactor unlike any you've seen. No pressurized vessels. No risk of steam explosions. A pool of molten salt glowing faintly, carrying dissolved thorium and uranium, fuel and coolant combined in one elegant, liquid system. In the 1960s, at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, engineers ran the molten salt reactor experiment. It worked flawlessly. Power output was stable. Fuel consumption was over 99%, far higher than conventional reactors. Waste, minimal, and it decayed to safe levels in mere centuries, not tens of thousands of years. The reactor was inherently safe. If anything went wrong, the molten salt would simply drain into holding tanks, stopping the reaction automatically. No meltdown possible. No catastrophic accident imaginable. Thorium, the fuel, is abundant and widely distributed. No single nation could monopolize it. It couldn't produce weapons-grade plutonium, making proliferation nearly impossible. Economically, it was brilliant. Smaller, simpler reactors, lower pressure, higher efficiency, cheaper fuel. Everything pointed to a clean, safe, sustainable nuclear future. After the successful demonstration, Oak Ridge engineers planned the next step: commercial thorium reactors. The technology was ready. The solution was proven. Then it was halted. In 1973, the Atomic Energy Commission terminated the program. Funding shifted to conventional uranium reactors, the kind that could produce plutonium for weapons. MSRE was shut down. Molten salt research effectively ended. The official reasoning? Budget constraints. Focus on technologies closer to commercialization. The real reason? Strategic. Thorium reactors didn't support weapons programs. The nuclear industry had grown around dual-use uranium technology, generating both electricity and plutonium for bombs. Billions had been invested in mining, enrichment, fuel fabrication, and waste systems. Thorium would make those investments obsolete. For decades, the molten salt reactor was forgotten. Its advantages ignored. Safer, cleaner, more efficient nuclear power shelved, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. Today, China and India are revisiting thorium for energy independence. But in the West, conventional reactors dominate, despite being less efficient and more dangerous. The experiment proved it. Thorium works. And that very success made it a threat too dangerous to allow. Vacuum velocity network. In the 1960s and 1970s, engineers successfully tested pneumatic tube systems capable of transporting people and cargo at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour through underground vacuum tubes, faster than airplanes, using far less energy. Capsules glided smoothly, accelerated gently at half AG, and traveled quietly and safely. Optimized designs could surpass 500 miles per hour. The principle was simple: Reduce air pressure inside tubes to minimize resistance. Then use linear electric motors for frictionless acceleration and braking. Energy efficiency was remarkable, and cost per mile was projected far below automobiles or airlines. Urban applications were revolutionary. Rapid, frequent transit connecting city centers to suburbs, eliminating traffic congestion and emissions. Commuters could move as easily as riding elevators. By 1969, Lockheed had demonstrated a prototype moving human passengers at 265 miles per hour. The Department of Transportation planned routes, analyzed benefits, and funded component development. Cities were interested. The system worked flawlessly. Then, in 1975, federal funding was eliminated. The stated reason, budgetary constraints. But the timing was suspicious. The technology threatened multiple industries. Car manufacturers saw declining sales. Oil companies faced reduced gasoline demand. Airlines lost short and medium-haul routes. Highway construction companies risked losing contracts, and real estate values tied to traditional transportation were disrupted. Even transit labor unions opposed it, since minimal staffing was required. The system still exists conceptually. Decades later, Elon Musk's Hyperloop revisited the idea with magnetic levitation. Yet, more than 40 years after successful demonstrations, no operational network exists. Engineering hurdles had been solved. The barriers were political and economic. A transport system that was fast, cheap, efficient, and accessible threatened too many entrenched interests. The experiment succeeded. That very success ensured it was suppressed. 10 experiments, 10 technologies, 10 solutions stopped, not for failure, but for success. Bacteria phage therapy curing infections. Hemp plastic outperforming steel. Moringa trees solving malnutrition. Self-repairing concrete outlasting centuries. Rock dust revitalizing soil. Ocean thermal energy providing unlimited clean power. Co's immunotherapy defeating cancer. Graphene filters delivering pure water. Thorium reactors surpassing uranium. And pneumatic tubes moving faster than planes. Each worked. Each solved real problems. Each threatened powerful industries built on scarcity, ongoing consumption, or centralized control. These aren't failures of science. They are failures of systems profiting from problems persisting. The experiments worked. They were stopped anyway. The question remains, how much progress has been deliberately prevented? Not because it couldn't succeed, but because it would succeed too well. If you found these hidden experiments as shocking as we did, don't let the truth stay buried. Subscribe to Strange Wise and hit the notification bell to uncover more incredible stories the world doesn't want you to know. Join our community of curious minds, because the truth is stranger than you think.